Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The second juz starts off from Sayaqul Sufaha. And in this second juz there are many topics. So this is continuing with Surah Al-Baqarah, which we covered yesterday. You could say it was like an introduction in the first juz, and now getting into the second juz there will be many ahkamat, many rulings with regards to different topics. So just to summarize quickly, in the beginning there will be mention regarding salah, zakat, hajj, charity, social welfare, mutual consultation, marriage, divorce. Talaq will be mentioned. Most of the details of talaq will be mentioned in this juz, which is the abghadul halal, the most detestable halal thing in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The iddah, the waiting period for the women, has been mentioned for those who are divorced and widowed. Bequests have been mentioned. The will, commerce and giving loans are also discussed in this juz. The details of iman have been mentioned. How the murderer, the qisas has been mentioned, how the murderer needs to be executed. However, if the heirs agree upon blood money, then that would be permissible as well. There's mention regarding the suckling period for the breastfed child. There's mention regarding menstruation, haid, in this surah as well. So getting into it, so the second juz, you could say, is more inclusive and comprehensive with regards to social life, family life and individual life as well. So the second juz starts off with سَيَقُولُ السُّفَهَاءُ مِنَ النَّاسِ مَا وَلَّاهُمْ عَنْ قِبْلَتِهِمُ الَّتِي كَانُوا عَلَيْهَا. This is with regards to the qibla change. Initially, for roughly around 16 months, the Muslims were facing Jerusalem, the Masjid al-Aqsa, as the qibla, and then it was changed to Masjid al-Haram. This is mentioned how, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was always eager, always looking for the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to change towards the Baytullah, the Kaaba. So this has been mentioned how قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهِكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ فَلَنُوَلِّيَنَّكَ قِبْلَةً تَرْضَاهَا فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. And then the order how it had come. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهِكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ. We see how you turn your face towards the sky. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the prayer, we would be waiting for the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what I will try to do is, as you know, we started off and I've mentioned the theme, the topics which will be covered in this surah, and then what I want to do is so it can be relatable in our Tarawih Salah. Many of us don't understand the Arabic, the language, the Qur'an, the translation. So when we are standing in our Tarawih Salah behind the Imam, what I want to do is cover these verses, mention the verses and a brief summary, even if not the whole translation, so that when this verse maybe comes up while we are reciting, while we are listening to the Imam recite the Qur'an, it will click to us, this topic is being discussed over here, and hopefully this can add to our concentration in our Salah, because of course Tarawih Salah at times becomes challenging to concentrate for long periods of time. So there's mention regarding the change of Qibla, and in the beginning there's also mention in the first quarter, you could say, there's mention about the prohibition of eating dead animals, blood, swine, and so on, except for if you're in a situation where you're facing death. Now there's some of the verses, beautiful verses in the beginning of this juz. فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ وَاشْكُرُوا لِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ. Allah is reminding us that remember me and I will remember you. وَاشْكُرُوا لِي, and be grateful. وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ, and do not be ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do not commit kufr. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. We have the believers have been told to seek help through sabr, patience and salah. Inna Allah ma'a sabirin, Allah is with the patient ones. And the next verse is وَلَا تَقُولُ لِمَنْ يُقْتَلُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٍ. Do not call those people who lose their lives in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, in jihad, or fighting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do not call them dead. بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ, they are alive, they have a certain type of life. And then further, the next verse mentions how Allah tests us in this life. Beautiful verse. وَلْنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. That Allah tests us in different manners: khawf, fear, ju', hunger, وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ, and loss of wealth, property and life, وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, and the fruits, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, and the glad tidings of those who have patience and sabr in these tests. And as I said, there's mention about إِنَّمَا حَرَمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةَ وَالدَّمَ وَلَحْمِ الْخِنْزِيرِ. It is haram, the dead, the carrion, the blood, swine, وَمَا أُحِلَّ بِهِ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ, and whatever has been slaughtered other than the name of Allah, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then there's mention about qisas, executing the person who committed murder. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has actually explained this as وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ. In qisas, in this execution, there is actually life, because you are actually preserving life by doing this. Then Allah says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyam. Fasting has been mentioned, that fasting has been ordained upon you. Kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. The purpose, la'allakum tattaqun, so that you adopt taqwa. Then Allah has also mentioned شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. The Ramadan is the month in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed the Qur'an. هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. This is also mentioned. Then moving on, Allah reminds us, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. When my ibad, when my people ask regarding me, then tell them I am close. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. I reply to the person who is pleading when they plead, when they ask. And then with regards, there are some rulings with regards to the fasting. أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةَ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفَثُ إِلَى نِسَائِكُمْ. How during the nights you would be permitted to go to the wives. هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنَّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has explained the relationship between husband and wife as libas. There is nothing between the insan and his libas, between the skin and his clothing. Allah has compared this relationship as clothing. This is how close this relationship should be between husband and wife. So there's mention regarding that, and how in i'tikaf you would not be allowed to go close to the wives. This mention regarding Ramadan and fasting. There's mention regarding jihad and fighting fi sabilillah as well. وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةٌ وَيَكُونَ الدِّينُ لِلَّهِ. There's mention regarding this in Medinan Surah. Meccan Surahs, you won't see ahkamat of jihad, of fighting, because at that time that wasn't the order. But once the Muslims had migrated to Medina, then the hukum of jihad had come. So you will see in the Medinan surahs there is mention regarding this. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the Hajj. Al-Hajj ashhurun ma'lumat. The months of Hajj are known. فَمَنْ فَرْضَ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجَّ فَلَا رَفَثَ وَلَا فُسُوقَ وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ. Hajj has been mentioned over here. Many ahkamat have been mentioned regarding Hajj. There is Surah Al-Hajj as well, but over there is a lot of emotional, you could say, support with regards to Hajj, but there's a lot of ahkamat in this surah regarding Hajj. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala later on in this juz mentions regarding gambling and alcohol. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ. They ask you regarding khamr, which is alcohol, and gambling, maysir. قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ. So this was the initial hukum, the initial commandment regarding khamr, regarding alcohol. So it was prohibited in 3 different stages. As we will go through the Qur'an, we will see the different stages it was prohibited in. Initially, it was advisory. That قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ. That in both of them, in alcohol and gambling, there are ithmun kabir, there are major sins, وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ, and there may be some benefits for the people. وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. But the ithm, the sin, is greater than the benefit that may be in there. So this was the initial. Then لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى. Next stage was not being permitted to get close to salah while you are intoxicated, and then eventually it was completely prohibited. Then there's mention regarding menstruation. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْمَحِيضِ. They ask you regarding the menstruating women. So there's rulings regarding that mentioned over here. We need to make sure that our women have this understanding with regards to the rulings of menstruation. This is a topic which is not discussed enough. Many people are still ignorant about the rulings regarding menstruation. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned this. And then further moving on, نِسَاؤُكُمْ حَرْثٌ لَكُمْ. That the relationship between the husband and the wife has been mentioned. فَأْتُوا حَرْثَكُمْ أَنَّ شِئْتُمْ. You may, the example given that you may come to your crop however you want. You may fulfill your desire in whichever position, but of course it needs to be at the correct place. So there's mention regarding that. There's mention about إِلَى لِلَّذِينَ يُؤْلُونَ مِن نِسَائِكُمْ تَرَبُّصُ أَرْبَعَةِ أَشْهُرٍ. This was a custom in the early days in the Arabs, how they would take oath of not going close to their wives. So there's mention regarding that. The concept was that it is like talaq, but it's not the same as talaq. Then talaq has been mentioned. وَإِنْ عَزَمُوا الطَّلَاقَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. This is, as mentioned earlier, this is the abghadul halal, the most detested, disliked halal thing that is permissible. From here in Surah Al-Baqarah, in this juz, the details of talaq have been mentioned. It's mentioned in quite some detail. So everyone is advised to, I'm not going to go through all the ahkamat, but everyone is advised, everyone, men and women, whether you're married or not, to go through these, because as imams, as scholars, people come and ask rulings. And many a times what we see is that these situations were avoidable. The situations that have been caused and the talaq which has occurred many a times because of ignorance, not knowing the rulings, not knowing how talaq should be done. So of course when we get married, the intention is that we are married until death or beyond as well in Jannah. May Allah bless our marriages. But sometimes things don't work out, and that's why there's the option of talaq over here mentioned in the Qur'an, and the rulings are clear. So we need to read regarding al-talaqu marratan fa imsakum bi ma'rufin aw tasrihun bi ihsan. Twice has been mentioned, but the third time will be مغلظة فإن طلقها فلا تحل له من بعد حتى تنكح زوجا غيره. If the third time talaq is done, then the woman is haram on the man until she marries another person. So there's, again, there's explanation and details with regards to the rulings. So we need to look upon this in our own time. Then Allah mentions the suckling period. وَالْوَالِدَاتُ يُرْضِعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ 2 years. لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يُتِمَّ الرَّضَاءَ. Whoever intends to complete the time period. So the maximum time period of suckling is 2 years, breastfeeding the child. Then in between all these ahkamat, there is reminder with regards to the salah as well. حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى. Safeguard your prayers, especially the middle prayer. There's a difference of opinion with regards to which prayer is the middle prayer, but many of the opinion is the Asr prayer, which is in the middle, and that is at such a time when businesses are closing. It's a time where prayer would quite most likely, if a prayer is missed, would be that one. So there's special emphasis on the middle prayer. And then there's advice regarding spending in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا فَيُضَاعِفَهُ لَهُ أَضْعَافًا كَثِيرًا. Whoever gives, Allah has given the example of a good loan. And if you look at the subhanallah, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put this, whatever we have, Allah is the one who has given us the wealth and the property and everything that we have. And Allah, from what He has given us, He is requesting us to give Him a loan, for which فَيُضَاعِفَهُ لَهُ أَضْعَافًا كَثِيرًا, for which He will multiply the reward. This loan, when it will be paid off, the reward will be multiplied. So this is such a beautiful way of putting it. And then the juz concludes with the story of Talut and Jalut and Dawood alayhi salam. وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ وَآتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْمُلْكَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَعَلَّمَهُ مِمَّا يَشَاءُ. How Dawood alayhi salam killed Jalut, David and Goliath. The story of David and Goliath concludes the second juz. And then inshallah we'll move on to the third juz tomorrow, which will conclude the Surah Al-Baqarah, and inshallah we'll move on to Surah Al-Imran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the understanding of the Qur'an, and may Allah give us the ability to implement the Qur'an into our lives and also propagate this to others. Ameen. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.